Hey y'all, Billy from Perma Pastures Farm. And here's your weekly update in this chicken tractor on steroids. All right, so here we got these birds. They're about a week away from when we can process them. And I think we have a pretty cool audible that I think a number of you are gonna like out there, because we were asked numerous times how well layers do within this system. So right now, remember, all of these birds, for those of you that are new, remember, go back and watch the beginning, it's important. But all of these birds within this system were hatched by us. We didn't get them from a hatchery, and there's nothing wrong with that. We hatched every single bird out with our rooster over there, persimmon Phil, and there was a combination of Australorbs and a number of other birds out there that basically Phil got his groove on with and produced the birds you see. But the original intent was to go ahead and put all of them in the freezer and then take some of them and replace some of the older birds we have in our laying flock, which are right at that 2-year mark. So it's kind of getting to the point where they're not productive anyway, and they probably ought to go in the freezer. So we're going to cover a couple of those things today. And we're going to talk about how we're going to retool this system to be able to accommodate mostly layers. But as you can see, I got a new shirt on, right? And it was sent to us by one of our awesome viewers. In fact, he's designed a few shirts for us already. The Black Locust Matters shirt, and then this one also. I think you can read between the lines. And it's very, very fitting for what we're going to discuss today. Now I want to give a shout out to my man Noah, AKA My Name Ain't Ryan. He comments all the time in the videos, very clever, very sharp guy, and it's been really a joy to get to know him. But he uses very clever ways to communicate sometimes difficult points that maybe you can't necessarily say. So shout out to my man there. Anyway, this kind of gets into what we're going to talk about this week. If you go back and watch some of the videos we put out earlier this week, it had to do with unusual things, let's say, in your compost. And this, believe it or not, is one of them. And it's important because in the original system that Jeff Lawton designed, you would have taken their bedding from inside the chicken tractor, put that down first, and then take cow manure or whatever manure you have, stick it on, and then daily you go out and put the food scraps on top of that. Well, we've had to retool this system, and it really turned out to be a blessing in disguise because we didn't know entirely how to do it before. So what we figured out in the process is that we put a piece of carbon down, which is basically their bedding for the week, and then we put the food scraps on top. They eat and they poop all over it, you see? And then at the end of every day, we go ahead and add more carbon. And then the cycle repeats every single day for an entire week. That was the way we had to retool this system to make it work in such a way to where if you don't have clean manure, you can still get the benefits of this incredible system without, where you can basically tweak things here and there to make it all happen. So yes, it does matter. It really does matter within this system because you're counting on these chickens to go out here, make their deposits. Whatever food scraps are left over are basically treated like that nitrogen as your poop would also be within this system. I know it's not a very sexy topic, it's not a fun topic, but it's a real reality. When you raise animals, this is going to be an issue no matter what. So it can be your ally, or it can be a really, really big problem if you don't know how to manage it. But this is one of those awesome ways in which we do it. Okay, so let's just kind of briefly talk about what's gonna happen within this system. All right, so within this system, the chickens are already out. We had friends over last night, we were watching a Hollywood movie. We don't do that very often, but it was a lot of fun, but we neglected, just like so many other people, we neglected to put up these birds. So instead of them being inside their chicken tractor, we're just gonna have to work with them outside. It makes things a little more cumbersome, but not that big a deal. It's no big deal at all. So, here we go. We got week 1, and that's just 1.5 cubic yards. But in these other piles, like I said, they haven't been brought in, they're kind of spread out, which who cares because we're gonna flip them anyway. This is 3 cubic yards. And then last but not least, we have this one here, which is far more, it's basically compost, but we're going to give it another time. So what we've been doing is instead of taking 1.5 cubic yards and turning it over, we've been taking 2 weeks worth of compost, piling them together, because honestly, it's the way we figured out before, and they work out and they break down even better. So ordinarily, this would turn on the outside of the cage. We don't have to do that. We can leave it in here. And that's exactly what we're going to do, because we need to move this whole system that way, at least for us. So what's going to happen, we're going to take this, we're going to file it down here. It's going to turn. The next pile behind me, we're going to do the same, so on and so forth. And then the pile that's in the cage down there where the chickens are kind of wondering like, hey, where's my food? That is going to turn into the pile next to it. So we will have three cubic yard piles within this net system. Whereas in the past, when you first saw us do this, it was always 1.5 cubic yards, because that's what this cage holds down there, a compost cage. So that's really it. And then we'll pick it up. We're going to go ahead and toss everything like we normally do. And then we're going to pick it up down there at the cage. We're going to move the whole system, and then it's off to the races like we normally do. We just took the compost cage off of that pile, and like I said, we've been taking 2 piles and turning them into one, because it really breaks down better for us that way. And honestly, the chickens, it takes them longer to scratch it out, plus it builds up more heat. You can still easily do it with 1 cubic yard. With us, it just seems to work better and more concise and simple if we can go ahead and consolidate these piles. Now, what we're going to do, you see where this little chicken here is working. We're going to take this week 1 pile, combine it with the week 2 pile, this one right here. It's probably hard to see because it's all spread out. So we're going to take those 2 and pile them right here. But we got a little additive. If you go back and watch that potato video, where it was pigs and potatoes video we just put out, this is the beauty of permaculture, y'all. This is what makes this so exciting, is that I can take something like this. For example, they're a little bit mangly, but right here, all these leaves that came off the potatoes, all these vines and everything else. Well, we put them in this bag with the full intent of putting them here. Now, we don't know how the nightshades are necessarily going to react with the chickens, so what we're going to do is stick them in this pile, but we're also going to do it like you would an 18-day compost pile. Remember, go back, watch the playlist on that. We get a lot of questions on that stuff. Folks, we understand there's a lot of moving parts when you make compost, but it doesn't have to be. So we've showed you an 18-day method. This here is a 30-day method. You know, pick which one you like. So how this is going to unfold in this particular case is we're going to go ahead and put down a bed of carbon. Should always have your carbon at the bottom. Then we're going to layer it through with this stuff. Now, when the chickens scratch this out, they're not going to get to the very bottom. And if you'll notice, and we'll try to demonstrate that throughout the video, whenever you turn a pile within this system, you're going to be shocked at how quickly and how much your chickens want to focus their attention on that pile. The reason why is because all that biota that was down in the pile is now made available to them on the surface. So what we're going to find out, they're going to scratch the living daylights out of this thing, but we're also going to put a fair amount of water in it. So we're going to treat it quasi like an 18-day compost pile as we add this stuff in here. Best way to do it is to just go ahead and show you. So Michelle's going to go ahead and wet this area down. We're going to put a little bit of carbon, which there seems to be already. And then we'll go ahead and layer this stuff on the bottom, cover it up. And then before you know it, this stuff will be totally incorporated. As usual, we're going to show you the progression. I mean, you can see it. Okay, here's the pile that's going to turn out next week. All right, so here's the next pile. It's broken down a little bit less than the one previous. You can even see it in the color where the stuff down there is indistinguishable. Here I can still take out little pieces of stuff, but like I said before, it's astonishing what happens in a week. But folks, here's the focus I wanted to hit on, at least for now, is whenever you turn these piles, especially your first week pile, you'll see just how interested these birds are all the way around it. This is the one they're going to decimate first, okay? For those of you that are new, this is how they derive their protein. We give them not 90%, it's kind of hard to judge, but the majority of what we feed them is going to be carbohydrates. They're going to get all their protein, they get a ton of minerals right out of these piles, and this will be the first one they wipe out. As you can see the straw, you can see the other things in there, even some of the food scraps that they didn't get before. But that's where they'll work first, and then they'll work, as they wipe this one out, they go for the easy protein. And then you can kind of see it. You can see where a majority of the birds are down here. Then as the day progresses, you'll see them kind of fan out across these piles. And before day's end, unless your piles are too hot, they will scratch a majority of these out. Now, considering the fact that they're 3 cubic yards, and these are dual purpose birds, not exclusively meat birds, they're gonna do a little bit less. We're learning so much by doing this stuff, y'all. So next up is what we always do. So we got an empty compost cage down here. We're gonna take their bedding out. We're gonna wet this down first, that's important. We're gonna take their bedding out, put it there, and then we're gonna give them their food scraps for the day. They'll come over and hit it, but right here is where they really want it. That's where all the action is gonna happen within this system, especially when they're trained to it. Okay, we'll get that done, and then we'll talk about the future of this system because we're about to process some birds. All right, well, it's time to grub. Now I got comfrey in my hand here. That's why we grow so much of it. I mean, check out how much they love this. They'll go in there and absolutely wipe that stuff out. So this is one of the reasons why we grow it. And then over here, we got our food scraps, typical stuff. And you know what? Here in about 15 minutes, they're gonna wipe all this out. In fact, you'll never know that there was comfrey ever in this thing. Well, folks, how cool is that? Here we are making, when he's going back to the shirt, y'all, this, believe it or not, defecation, nobody likes to talk about it. It's not a fun word, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of what builds this system. Whether it comes from the microbes, and yes, they do that sort of thing, whether it comes from these birds, or, you know, to a certain extent, the food scraps even act that same, whatever comfrey they don't leave is all going to have the same effect within this system. We got carbon at the bottom, we got a nitrogen layer in the form of their poop, leftover food scraps, and whatever green material we throw in here as well. Okay, so we got all that covered. Now let's talk about the future of what's going to happen within this system. And we'll try to cover it. Well, of course we will cover it. Okay, within this system, we got roosters, we got hens, we got a little bit of everything all within here, right in this cage. Okay, so what we're going to do, here's the big reveal, I suppose, is that within this system, it's been exclusively for meat birds. So we're going to extract all of the roosters out of this system, okay? In fact, we're even going to take our rooster that's over there in the laying flock, and we're going to take all those birds, the old birds in the laying flock, and those are going to be basically stew meat, a lot of them. Okay, so that's going to leave us with a bunch of hens. We're going to take this chicken tractor on steroids that we use exclusively for meat birds. We're going to get it out of here, and we're going to tool that laying flock with our very best birds. We're going to keep a few of them that we currently have in there, and we're going to select all the ones out of here that look the best. And we're going to wind up with, we haven't really done the numbers on it yet, but we're going to say somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30 birds within that other system. And then they are going to take over where these left off. So think about how awesome this system can be for you folks, especially in this time. I keep going on about it, and I know a lot of folks are tired of hearing it, but it would be irresponsible not for me to bring it up. But hey, we got inflation going through the roof, and it's only going to get higher. You got meat vacant on the shelves. Just go there and look for yourselves. At our local place, we're seeing it all over. You know, they got some meat, others they don't. Even Michelle spoke to the meat manager at one of our local places, and they said, look, hey, it's so erratic right now. We don't even know what's coming in on the truck, even though we make these orders. Well, here's a way for you to mitigate that, to eliminate, to some extent, your problems with that supply chain. So we can continue indefinitely within this chicken tractor on steroids, extract the protein we need out of it, and leave the other elements behind. If we want, we can go ahead and incubate more eggs, produce a whole nother batch, which is exactly what we're going to do. Think about how beautiful this system is. You got one system where we're producing meat. We're producing eggs if we want. We're producing, at this point, 3 cubic yards of well, actually 1.5 cubic yards per week of finished compost that we can use in our gardens. I can't think of a better system out there. Yes, does it require a little more work? Absolutely. But most of it is centered on 1 day a week. But you're putting your hands less on the compost. You're interacting with this system, but in a very minimalistic type way. So folks, for those of you out there that are interested, go back. We got a playlist of all this stuff. But stay tuned for how this thing is going to transform and go from a meat system into an egg laying system. And we're going to show you how all that works out. How cool is that? So folks, stick around. We're going to keep it going. We're going to keep it rocking and popping. So stay tuned for what we're going to do with these birds, where we take the roosters out and maybe some of the troublesome hens and get those into the freezer. And then we're going to keep on rocking within this system and keep on producing compost. So folks, remember, subscribe. Tell your friends about what we're doing. It's important. It's the most consequential chicken and compost producing system on planet Earth, bar none. So until next time, this is Billy, the Permaculture Pimp Daddy, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. And how do you not get excited about this, y'all? We'll see you next time.